I once heard the great violin teacher Dorothy DeLay say, "I never saw a bow change that I couldn't hear." And she's right. You can try for bow changes that don't make any sound at all, but actually you always hear them. But it's one thing to hear them in a bad way and one thing to hear them in a good way. And I think that there are bad ways to make a bow change, and that has to do, for me, with letting the sound dip too much. Now, if you watch a needle on a tape recorder or a volume meter like I have, at a bow change, the needle will usually always dip, which means that your volume in the turnaround has somehow decreased. This will lead to choppy sounding phrasing. And this is something you don't want, especially if you want to create an unbroken line and you have to change the bow. So how do you counteract the dip in volume with the bow change? Well, two things. One of them is to make sure that the pressure does not let up right on the change. Which means, if you want to be careful, put a little more pressure on right at the change, or rather right before the change. And the second thing, of course, is bow speed. If you want to have a very unbroken bow change, go a little faster right before you change the bow. And this is most easily accomplished by a motion with the arm, which is analogous to the whip shifting that we talked about. And it's a little bit of whipping the arm. This is the paintbrush motion, whereas if you're painting something, you go like this with the brush. Well, before the bristles change direction, your hand starts to change direction. The brush itself changes. And it's a little bit like this with the bow as well. But when you change bow from down to up, the arm comes back a little ahead of the hand. And this will ensure that when you go to the end of the bow, it doesn't just stop like a train that's run into the station. It goes somewhere and it turns around. Very, very slightly. Don't exaggerate, but just enough so that the feeling of motion is continuous. On the down to the up bow, it's most easily accomplished by a little bit of upward rotation with the arm, where you feel your arm starting to rise and come back just before the fingers. If you want to watch a very, very exaggerated but very beautiful example of this motion, look at the videos of Jacqueline Dupre, who had a bow arm that was almost like a swan's neck. It just went like this back and forth, and very, very seamless. It also happens at the down bow change, where the arm can drop and start to come back a little bit. So eventually, when you get to this, where you want to make the smoothest bow changes you can, on the up bow, you're going to start to come back a little bit ahead of time. You're going to increase the speed. Don't dare let up the pressure. Make a little circle out here. Just the tiniest little circle. Don't stop and start again. And on the down bow, let your arm start to come back and your fingers follow. Remember the paintbrush. Remember to keep your arm moving. And most importantly, keep your sound in your ear. Don't let it drop. Practice scales. Practice single notes, until this motion is as fluid as your shifting motion. And you'll have the least audible bow changes possible.